Right, get it all. So we're moving on to Surah 86, Surah at-Tariq, that which comes at night, right? Surah 86, Surah at-Tariq, right? So I want is a very very short 17 verses in this surah, right? But before I read this, I want to, or as part of this, I want to talk about something called suicide energies, right? Suicide energies, meaning that energies that feed off of your life, right? Or harvest your energy, right? Feed off of your life or harvest your energy to the point that you just lie down on your bed and you feel like you can't even move to get up to do the things that you need to get done, right? Because of voices, either voices that you hear and literally in your head, right? Or voices that you that are being spoken and you're not directly hearing it, but it's impacting on you, right? And on one of these energies is suicidal energies, and it's not always in our spirit form, right? Sometimes the powers that be, or dark side powers that be in the world, right, blast off these things through whatever technologies that they have set up in the world already existing, right? And it could infiltrate music, it could infiltrate through different cell towers or whatever it is, right? And they blast it off directly into your brain, right? Directly into your brain, right? And the intention is to what? Stop you from doing productive things, right? You have something to do at home, or it's either to drive you to work yourself so hard, right? So it's two things that they do. They want to stop you from doing productive things, or two, make you so productive that it actually it accelerates your death faster, right? Accelerates your death or accelerates your passing. Two, and three, voices that makes you actually want to go and do these things, right? Take your life, take your own life, and so on, right? So we are addressing these forces in the universe. And fourth, voices that play, right, on your weaknesses, right? Your weaknesses. You have certain weaknesses. For example, you have a certain weakness about the way that you, or the way that you look physically, right? A little weakness about an emotion, about being in a relationship. And even though you might find yourself in a content or a fulfilling or a relationship that's supposed to be satisfactory to you or content to you, right? You find yourself constantly questioning, right? So this is what the dark side energies of the forces are responsible for. So just like so, it is all in a battle of between good and evil, right? It all boils down to that constant battle that's ongoing in the world between good and evil, right? So there are forces that really do not want to see you be in a satisfactory, happy relation. For example, there are forces that do not want to add or contribute to your happiness or your well-being, right? So it all boils down to religion and the battle between good and evil at the end of the day, right? Or righteousness and the battle between righteousness and non-righteousness at the end of the day, right? Because there are forces and these suicidal energies, right? They want to pull your life energy out of you, and that's the battle that a lot of us are facing right now, right? Forces that want to actually extract the energy before it is Allah's time or Allah's will for you to leave the earth, right? So it is to let forces in the universe know, right, wherever these things are coming from, right, that hey, there are certain things in my life that I am actually in control of, right? I and Allah, I and God alone, right, in control of certain things regarding myself, right? Not to do with anybody else, but regarding my own self, right? And there's nothing that XYZ, right, forces within the universe or within the world that we live in, the material world that we live in, could do to interrupt that, right? So it's the and that's why I say to actually sometimes we need to. Some people might deal with it differently. I deal with it by actually speaking. So you find that that's why, like home, and I'm going through these things, right? I actually speak, right? Speak out into the universe, right? To ward some of these forces or to weaken some of these energies. Because if you are coming into my life to simply for the purpose and the intention, right, for the intent and the purpose to disrupt my flow, right, then it is to speak that into the universe and allow whatever the forces, because we don't know people's intentions at the end of the day, right? We could only speculate, right? So to ward off the intention, right, energies to say, hey, throw you off vibe or your path or whatever it is, right? So that is what this chapter is really about, helping you to, in the midst of chaos, right, in the midst of turmoil, right, in the midst of something negative that's happening to you, right, to rock back, right, and say, hey, rock back in terms of your mind, right, and your heart. Rock back and say, hey, I am in control of myself, right? I may not be in control of the way that God organizes the environment. I may not be in control of the way that God organizes the universe around me, right? But I am in control of myself, right? And by virtue of being in control of myself, right, I could impact the way how the universe or the creator of the universe organizes or arranges itself around me, right? So the book says, it says that you have a protector for the time that you are on earth, right? You are assigned in the unseen and so on. You are assigned protectors, right? Protectors for while you are here until it is time for Allah to actually take you back, right? Until it's time to actually return to that which is called death, or physical, actual death on earth, right? So let man observe from what he was created, right? Deeper meaning to this is not just your physical creation and so on, but observe from the point, the space that you were created, right? So remember we talked about Allah or God being neutral, right? Meaning that Allah would lay down conditions. Hey, I expect you to behave in this particular way, right? And if you don't, that is when your judgment reigns. So it's not that the Lord takes vengeance or anything, as the case may be, but our own actions contribute to this vengeance, right? Our own actions contribute to the vengeance. So it is like a way. Sometimes this might motivate people to act better by saying, hey, God is taking vengeance on you, right? But in reality, you take vengeance upon your own self, right? By the means of actions that you carry out in the world, right? So let man observe from what he was created, right? So meaning that, hey, you too, right? You too can learn, right, from the play, from how Allah or God plays out the situation, right? So if we can move closer by moving closer to Allah, meaning what? We are moving closer to, in every situation, maintaining as being as neutral as possible, right? Being as neutral as possible. Doesn't mean that we don't have to have our principles and stances. In fact, we should keep our principles, values, and stances. What I mean by being neutral in terms of our energy, right? So your emotions, your thoughts, right? Regardless of the chaos that's happening in your external environment, right? To remain balanced and be disciplined, right? Maintain balance and be disciplined, meaning that, A, even though you're hearing certain voices, things telling you certain things, you do that which is what you need to do for the day, right? These things would eventually dissipate. It would feel like it's forever this is happening, right? But it's a timing and it will dissipate. You get up, you do the required, right? Whatever's in whatever space that you are in, right? Because the forces are forces that actually, actually want to make you to leave the earth. That's the point. It feeds off your energy, right? They feed off your energy, so it wants you to want to leave the earth, right? So maintaining neutrality regardless of what's going on in here, right, and what's going on outside there, right? So talking about what? Balancing your emotions. So remember, the book talks about Allah being proportioning you, right? Allah proportioning you, right? Making you closer to Him by virtue of one, balancing your mind in terms of reason, right? If you were previously a person that gets too emotional or reacts too emotional, right? When I said to read the Quran 3 times, a sound judgment, right? Allah will proportion you, right? And bring you closer, right, to Him, meaning that closer to a balance between your emotion and reasoning, right? So Allah is able to, indeed, He, Allah, to return you to life. Allah is able to return you to life, right? So this day, what is called Day of Judgment, is when secrets will be put on trial, meaning that there is nothing to hide, right? If you are being judged, exposed, examined, right? Looked into, searched, right? Meaning that there is nothing to hide on this day, meaning that you are open to, right? Your life is put on trial, your secrets, whatever secrets you have, are put on trial, and so on, right? The book said, then he, man, will have no power or any helper, right? So it refers to what? The person being judged, right? Meaning that if you are a person that is being judged by the world and so on, right? It would appear to that you do not have, Allah is your helper, right? And that's why the book makes sufficient reference to Allah being sufficient, right? Allah being sufficient as your ally. Once you take Allah as your ally for this period and time, right? There is that's what you really need, right? To get through this period, right? And it does not mean that we as human beings should not help others. So that's what I say. Certain verses in the book, if you interpret it wrongly, you could actually become an evil person, right? So that's why I encourage people, hey, the book says XYZ about there being no helper, or there, when on Day of Judgment, right? You're alone, you're by yourself, whatever. I encourage people as human beings to help each other where you can help each other, right? Help each other where you can help each other, right? Because we are not God at the end of the day, right? So to make that kind of call, I mean, in terms of there being no power, no help for anybody, right? So the Quran is a decisive statement, right? A decisive statement. And this is reference to what? There is no God but Allah, right? Once you are teaching this book or have an intimate relationship with the content in the book or Allah, you automatically or naturally should accept, right? It is to accept that there is no God but Allah, right? And if you are a polytheist reading the book, right, that's what the battle or the struggle will come from. But you will at the end, right, you will come to understand this principle or this concept in Islam, that there is no God worthy of worship, right? There is no entity worthy of worship other than the one supreme creator, Allah, who created the universe itself, right? And the book is not amusement, meaning the book is not to be taken as a joke, right? The Quran is never to be taken as a joke, right? So even though others might be planning a plan, right? Others might be planning whatever they have to plan, right? Other beings, other entities, people conspire, people plan, right? Allah has a plan, right? That's why we find that, hey, I made plans for life to go in this direction and something happened and you gone completely 180-degree off, right? But that off is meant to lead you to something better, to something greater, right? So even though you might be planning, or they might be planning, or others might be planning some plan, right? Allah also plans according to you, your path, your deeds, and so on, right? So it's to acknowledge these things. So if your plan gets thrown off, right, there is another path for you, there's another life path for you, perhaps, or another way that you were not seeing before, right? So allow time for disbelievers, meaning that be patient, right? If somebody don't have the same viewpoint as you, you don't eradicate them from the face of the planet, right? Allow time for people will come to see the truth, right? In time. Do not take revenge for the way that anybody has treated you in the past, right? Do not hasten revenge for how people have treated you in the past. Maintain good intention and goodwill towards everybody, right? And let the Creator sort out the rest, right? So this is Surah 86, and we will move forward to 87, God's willing, inshallah, right? God's willing, tomorrow, right? So take care, everybody, and have a good day.